his first is that I'm going to, I mean, that will never be me again. And it hasn't been. His weight's up. You know, last year at this time he was consistently 292, 293. And we're talking to him about the fact that, like, you're a guy that should be over 300 pounds. Now he's 306. You know, right now our goal offensively is to have Caden Barnett play inside, which would, you know, give Rex a really good opportunity to be one of the starting tackles. And so that's what we would, you know, that's where he's going to start off in the spring.
How important do you think this time of year is, obviously, when the season comes around?
Oh, this is everything in terms of, look, there's not a day that we could take off in terms of, like, what we've got to do. We have a lot of, and look, there's some guys that were a year away last year. You know, Keone Parks needs a really good offseason. He was, you know, he hadn't ever played corner, and then all of a sudden, you know, we move him after fall camp in 23, and, you know, so it was really his first extended run last year. So, you know, he needs all of that. You know, Rex Johnson needs all this right now. You know, but then you take guys like Gio Panozzo, Braylon Jenkins, guys that we redshirted that need the development and all this that goes on. So yeah, I mean, we can't waste a day. So this is the most important thing right now, and this is all we can control anyway. So we just control one day at a time.
What kind of position battles are you focused on right now?
Everything. You know, like, there's not a job. I mean, you can maybe say Sebastian Harsh is a guy that's a returning starter that's been productive. Tice Westland did good things. He's a returning guy that's been productive. Rook has been productive. Outside of that, there's not a job that's cemented on deal. I mean, nothing. Like, and so that's the great thing about it, is the fact that, like, everybody's got to fight for what they've got. Offensive line wise, you know, last year we had about three and a half winning players, you know, per game. You know, when you take an injury and this guy's out, take a this and this guy's out, that's got to get up to 9. You know, you'd love it to be 10, but it's got to be 8 and 9 guys that can win for you in the offensive line in any game, and we're not there. You know, and so those are all battles. You know, there'll be battles at receiver, there'll be battles at corner. You know, we weren't good enough at that position last year to where there's a returning starter that can feel like, you know, I've got something done or I've got something made. So we're not even close. So everything's a battle.
You talked about last year not going to Caden earlier because you were like, I don't know, you know, what he's got, and plus his knee still coming off that. What is a healthy offseason doing for him, and what have you seen out of him?
This is an incredible offseason for him in that regard. And also part of it last year at the time, you know, one of the things that we had to take in consideration too, Evan was like our run game too. You know, it was like, okay, if Evan Sabota wasn't playing quarterback, then what were we doing in the run game? You know, Sam Scott was banged up, Harrison Whaley wasn't around. You know, so it was like, okay, to generate some things in the run game. And we, you know, when you're down a couple offensive linemen, it's like, okay, we're not just rolling people out of there. You know, Evan had to be a big chunk of the run game too. For Caden right now this has been a great offseason for him. I mean, he's healthy. He moves around with no brace. Like, he's feeling good. He's in a great spot.
Are you seeing stuff out of him different leadership-wise?
Leadership-wise, it's way different.
Yeah.
Leadership-wise, the team is different. Like, I don't have to, like, you know, again, you know, we're not going to restrain anybody from being a leader. So you take Jack Walsh, take Caden Barnett, take Caden Anderson, John Knight, Svoboda. You know, we've got leaders on offense in that regard. Defensively, that's got to come about a little bit because a lot of these guys are new, or they've been redshirted. You know, like Gary Rutherford's got all the characteristics of a leader, but he got redshirted last year. He's not in that position yet to be able to do that. So, but no, there's a different vibe that way.
So I saw the Nebraska thing yesterday. Do you think this is kind of the end of the spring game, or what's your plan for that going forward?
Well, I mean, it's the end of the televised spring game, probably. You know, I mean, like, I think, you know, when somebody can, you know, record your spring game on the Big Ten Network and have their 40-person recruiting staff evaluate all your players, you know, then yeah, I get it from their end of it. You know, until we put ours on TV or something, we're not going to change what we do and that type of thing. And so that's, but I understand their perspective.
You brought up Gary. Do you think Gary and Dash could be two guys that battle your two new dudes to get some playing time?
Yeah, I mean, between those two, Evan Eller, the two new guys, I mean, there's competition there. Should be depth there. Should be, you know, Gary Rutherford, I think, is going to be a really, really good player here. And he's just, his demeanor, his motor, you know, he's a really good athlete with a high motor. And, you know, realistically, you know, in a lot of situations would have been a guy that we could have just burned a red shirt on a year ago. But, you know, I'm glad we didn't. But Gary's going to be really good. Now, that said, you know, the two new ones that we brought in are, you know, very physically gifted, so that helps too. So.
How's Harrison doing? Just you mentioned leadership earlier, just mentally coming off of last year.
Yeah, I mean, he's still actually still. I mean, coming out of the season, you know, I think he still has a little bit more work to do before he would be 100% in that regard. But he's doing all right. I mean, like, there's not. I think that, you know, he needs a good work in the spring. I'm not going to put him in anything live, but he needs good work in the spring, and then, you know, he needs to have a really good summer leading into the fall. Obviously, he's a guy that's going to be counted on, but there's another couple good backs here right now too, and you know, and so that's a good thing too, because he's got competition. Like, he's not immune to competition either. It's competition there.
Does the playbook change at all with Caden at quarterback, just going forward with the offense?
I mean, there's going to be some things that we emphasize different and do differently, obviously offensively, and that based on, you know, kind of how we are blocking wise. You know, that always has a big part of it. Well, I think we're uniquely talented in a couple positions, tight end being one of them. So that dictates some things there. But yeah, I mean, do we run Caden as much as we did Evan? No. Do we really want to run Evan as much as we ran Evan? Probably not. But we didn't, for a while, didn't have a ton of options to turn and hand it to either. So that was kind of part of the deal.
You said the last couple of weeks was for self-reflection for you guys when you finally were able to take a breath. Can you share with us at all any self-reflection that maybe?
Well, I mean, I think first thing is that, like, you look at, you know, okay, what were we doing fundamentally within each? So you take each series of calls, each series of plays, and all that, and you're looking at it and go, okay, from a fundamental standpoint, are we teaching this right? From a blitz standpoint, is the aiming point right? Is our vision point right? You know, was our technique right in this particular call? And you look at it and go, okay, how are we coaching this, and do we need to make an adjustment with that? The second part of it is okay, were we utilizing our players the best way that we possibly could? And, you know, so those are things that we discuss and look at and say, okay, you know, we could have made it more of an emphasis in this area or that area, and do that. And then the third thing is, you know, don't, you know, if you feel like that you fundamentally are teaching something a certain way, and, you know, maybe you have to look at it. It's always players, formations, plays. It's what the players dictate. It's not just what you can draw on a board or change that way. It's what the player dictates. And, you know, and so that's all part of it. And there'll be tweaks and changes that we do, for sure. Defensively, there's going to be tweaks and changes that we do. I mean, you know, like right now, you're looking at the fact that your lightest linebacker is 232 pounds. A year ago, our heaviest linebacker was 228 pounds. You know, like, so when you look at it and go, okay, we could do some things blitz game wise when we're downhill on people, well, you'll make a bigger dent, you know, and that's, so there's some things that you look at and you go, okay, we need to emphasize this, we need to emphasize that. But no, it's a big self-reflection on those things. And then, you know, that always followed the roster makeup, right? You know, my first job as a head coach is set a tone, set a culture. My second job is roster construction. And then the third job is how we use the players that we got. You know, Nick Saban was 34-24-1 at Michigan State. He's the greatest college coach in history. He was 201-29 at Alabama. It's a 167-5 difference. We had better rosters at Alabama than he did at Michigan State. I'm not saying that that's a compare, you know, but what I'm saying is that's why I said it goes in order that way. It's with that construction part of it. There's player element where we were lacking depth. We had to get that addressed. I think we're trying. You know, I think we've made some progress in it. There was a how we utilize an element, and then there was a what we were teaching them element. And so we have to look at all those things.
What about personally doing the job of head coach? I know most head coaches say you don't know what you don't know until you're in that position. What did you learn about the position that you couldn't possibly have known that you know now?
Well, I mean, I think the thing is you just look and say, okay, where did you make mistakes? You know, in the fact that I let probably 2023, you know, blind me to what our works really were. Okay, Frank Crum was leaving. What was our replacement plan? Oh, okay. 4 wide receivers that were seniors were leaving. Were we getting that leadership and maturity from? Okay. Wyatt Eckler and Isaac White had played every play for 2 straight years. Okay, what happens if they don't? You know, and so I think there were some things that kind of let blind us based on what had just happened. And so I didn't do, you know, like I said, culture, you know, I think the way we finished the season says the culture in the place is in good shape, you know. Construction of the roster, though, I got an F- in that regard, in the fact that, like, we didn't have this depth and the detail that we needed at those positions. And then I think from the coaching standpoint, that's why I said there was things that I want, you know, we're going to look at every level of it as far as, okay, fundamentally, how are we teaching this? Fundamentally, were we giving ourselves the best opportunity with what we had with the player? And then were we asking the player to do the things that give him the best chance to be successful? So all encompassing there, but no, you focus far more on mistakes. And that's what I focused on was, okay, these are the mistakes I made and this is how we correct them.
You guys good?
Okay.